We've no music. Just keep swimming.
Nice. I love that.
Elegant, articulate, and endlessly charming. He embodied everything the world imagined a British gentleman to be.
I am Loki.
From Shakespearean stages to the billion-dollar world of Marvel, his transformation into Loki, the silver-tongued god of mischief, made him an international obsession. Critics called him the actor who made villainy seductive. UNICEF named him a global ambassador. Fans saw him as proof that fame and humility could coexist, for a time. Tom Hiddleston seemed untouchable. But behind that polished composure was a man who felt deeply. Tom Hiddleston was a passionate lover, sincere, romantic, and unafraid to wear his heart on his sleeve. It was that same passion that made audiences fall in love with him and, ironically, the very thing that would later test his public image. Years later, in a 2025 interview, his nervous smile when asked about that past still revealed the weight of scrutiny that never truly faded. So tonight, we ask the question beneath the charm and the chaos. What turned one of Hollywood's most beloved gentlemen into a man the internet tried to cancel? Before he was the trickster god of the Marvel Universe, Tom Hiddleston was a quiet boy from Westminster born into a world of intellect, discipline, and understated privilege. His father, James Hiddleston, was a self-made chemist turned pharmaceutical executive. His mother, Diana, an arts manager from an Old English lineage. From his father, Tom learned the dignity of work. From his mother, the rhythm of culture and empathy. But when his parents divorced when he was 13, that fracture would leave a quiet mark, one that later surfaced in the fragility behind his most human performances. At the Dragon School and later at Eton College alongside Prince William and Eddie Redmayne, Tom stood out not for arrogance, but for empathy. Teachers recalled a boy who listened first, then transformed. He played rugby until an injury left a faint scar across his forehead, a reminder. He once said, "That pain teaches humility." At Cambridge, he studied classics and acted in student theater, translating that inner discipline into art. The stage became his refuge, a place where intellect and emotion could finally meet. Then came the turning point. After graduating from the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, Hiddleston's early television roles barely paid the bills. Yet his magnetic stage work, especially in Othello and Cymbeline, caught the eye of director Kenneth Branagh. Impressed. Branagh cast him first in the BBC series Wallander, then invited him to audition for Thor 2011. At first, Hiddleston read for the hero, hammer in hand. But Branagh saw something deeper, a darkness wrapped in grace. And from that moment, Loki was born. Within months, Tom Hiddleston transformed from theater darling to global phenomenon. Critics called his Loki Shakespearean armor a villain who smiled with both menace and melancholy. For audiences, he became something rare, an actor who made intelligence magnetic, kindness cool, and vulnerability heroic. By the early 2010s, Tom Hiddleston had become more than just an actor, he was a global phenomenon. His portrayal of Loki transformed from a one-time antagonist into one of the most beloved anti-heroes in cinema history. Across Thor, the Avengers, and Loki, the trickster god's smirk became a cultural language of its own, part menace, part charm, entirely magnetic. Fans didn't just watch him, they followed him. Online, Hiddlestoners flooded timelines with GIFs, quotes, and interviews where Tom's laughter seemed to make the world a little lighter. The numbers told their own story. The Avengers 2012 grossed over $1.5 billion worldwide. Thor. The Dark World crossed $600 million, even off-screen. His name became a brand of elegance, a man who could discuss Shakespeare in the same breath as superhero cinema. He was voted among GQ's best-dressed men, topped sexiest actor polls, and became a symbol of intellect meets charm, the thinking woman's heartthrob. But his stardom wasn't just built on Marvel. In 2016, The Night Manager on BBC and AMC showcased another side of him, suave. Morally conflicted, irresistibly human. The performance earned him a Golden Globe and an Emmy nomination, cementing his crossover from blockbuster villain to prestige actor, around the same time. Only Lovers Left Alive and Crimson Peak revealed his taste for artful risks. Outside the screen, he was just as admired. As a UNICEF ambassador, he traveled to South Sudan in 2013 to document the impact of famine and conflict on children. His field diaries and interviews radiated sincerity. He wasn't just acting empathy, he was living it. For a while, it felt like Tom Hiddleston had cracked the impossible code, a movie star adored by critics, fans, and activists alike. A man who could headline a billion-dollar franchise, quote T.S. Eliot, and dance with schoolchildren on charity trips all in the same year. He wasn't just Loki anymore, he was the gentleman of Hollywood. And yet, beneath the perfection, tiny fissures were forming, invisible then, but ready to widen. For years, Tom Hiddleston seemed untouchable, the rare celebrity who carried fame with grace, intellect, and humility. He was the actor people pointed to when asked if decency could survive in Hollywood. But even the finest marble, under constant light, begins to show its fractures. The first appeared quietly. In mid-2016, the headlines shifted from Loki triumphs to Loki in love, when photos of Tom and Taylor Swift strolling hand-in-hand along a Rhode Island beach surfaced. The world didn't just watch it interpreted. What began as tenderness was reframed as theater. Within days, Hashtags like Hiddleswift filled timelines, and a love story became public property. Then came the infamous tank top ITS. What may have been a private joke among friends turned into a cultural moment that refused to fade. The internet, once enchanted by his restraint, began to see try hard instead of charm, artifice instead of sincerity. For the first time, people weren't laughing with Tom Hiddleston, they were laughing at him. That laughter lingered. Soon, whispers multiplied rumored romances, exaggerated interviews, dissected smiles. Online forums questioned whether his warmth was genuine or rehearsed. The perfection that once inspired trust now invited suspicion. Then came the Golden Globe speech. What he meant as gratitude for humanitarian workers in South Sudan came out awkwardly self-referential. The intent was pure, the optics, less so. Critics called it tone-deaf, and social media turned a heartfelt moment into a punchline. None of this was scandalous, yet it marked a shift not in who Tom Hiddleston was, but in how the world had decided to see him. Perfection, it seemed, had reached its breaking point. Tom Hiddleston's fall was never dramatic, it was delicate. Less a collapse than a slow dimming of a star that once burned with quiet brilliance. In 2016, he stood at the height of his craft, a Golden Globe contender, a Marvel favorite, a man so composed that bookmakers whispered he might be the next James Bond. He was everywhere, radiant yet refined. But in the glare of constant attention, even grace can tire the eye. What had once been magnetic became overfamiliar. The world that once admired his elegance began to crave someone louder, rougher, less perfect. By 2017, that fatigue had settled in. The Golden Globe speech, a small misstep, became a symbol of something larger, how sincerity can sound like ego once the public has grown weary. The applause was polite, the headlines unforgiving. His apology came swiftly. But in the echo chamber of modern fame, even humility can be mistaken for calculation. Hollywood, sensing the change in temperature, drifted away. The James Bond rumors vanished. I saw the light pass quietly. Hiddleston himself withdrew, not in defeat, but in self-preservation to rediscover purpose away from the noise. And as the years passed, fragments of that golden era resurfaced online, the smile, the speech, the tank top not as admiration, but as irony. To a generation raised on cynicism, his sincerity felt like another performance. Yet beneath the memes and the misunderstandings remained the same man, thoughtful, disciplined, gentle. Tom Hiddleston hadn't fallen from grace. He'd simply stepped aside, letting the storm of fame pass over. Perhaps that is the quiet tragedy of his story, that in a world addicted to spectacle, a man who led with sincerity could fade not because he failed, but because he refused to become something he wasn't. He didn't fall from the stage. The audience simply turned away. In the aftermath of his public stumble, Tom Hiddleston did what any consummate professional might do. He stepped back, apologized with grace, and quietly tried to rebuild the dignity that had always defined him. But in the modern ecosystem of fame, where memory is permanent and perception is everything, redemption is rarely a return, it's a reinvention. His first attempt came swiftly. After the backlash to his Golden Globe speech, he released a measured apology, calm, articulate, and deeply British in tone. "My words came out wrong," he said, explaining that nervousness had muddled his intentions. To longtime fans, it was an act of humility. To skeptics, it was too polished, too careful, another PR maneuver rather than contrition from the heart. And so, the redemption arc began not with forgiveness, but with doubt. Rather than defend himself further, Tom disappeared from the spotlight. For months, there were no interviews, no talk show appearances, no social media posts. When he resurfaced, it wasn't with spectacle, but with substance, returning to what had always been his sanctuary performance. In Kong Skull Island 2017, he traded villainy for heroism, reminding audiences of his cinematic versatility. In the stage revival of Betrayal 2019, he bared a quieter, more mature side of performance that critics called achingly human. And yet, something had shifted. The warmth that once met him felt cautious, almost analytical. When Marvel announced Loki 2021, it reignited his global relevance, but not his innocence. The show's success proved that audiences still loved the character, but they no longer believed in the man quite the same way. By 2024, he seemed to find balance again, starring in The Life of Chuck, marrying fellow actor Zawe Ashton, and continuing his UNICEF advocacy. Still, in every interview, there lingered an echo, that nervous half-smile whenever the name Taylor Swift was mentioned, the visible discomfort when old headlines resurfaced. Tom Hiddleston's redemption didn't fail because he did too little. It failed because the world had already decided what story it wanted to tell. And once a narrative solidifies in the digital age, sincerity alone can no longer rewrite it. By 2025, Tom Hiddleston's story had come full circle, not to the glittering height of unblemished adoration, but to something quieter, steadier, and perhaps more human. He was no longer the internet's perfect gentleman, nor the tabloid's favorite target. He existed in that rare middle ground of fame where respect replaces obsession, and endurance becomes its own kind of redemption. Professionally, he had survived where others might have vanished. Loki's second season in 2023 restored much of his cultural relevance. drawing praise for its emotional complexity and his restrained, introspective performance. The Life of Chuck in 2024 positioned him once again as a serious actor, capable of empathy without pretense, off-screen. He married Zawe Ashton a private ceremony, far from the paparazzi lenses that once haunted him and refocused on philanthropy, still serving as a UNICEF ambassador. But beneath the quiet success was a deeper truth the world had changed, and so had the way it viewed its idols. The internet that once built him up had also taught him and millions watching how fragile image could be in an era of instant backlash and collective judgment. The same platforms that once turned his laughter into viral warmth could, within hours, turn kindness into cringe. And yet, there's something remarkable in the way Hiddleston endured it. He didn't rage against the press or attempt to reclaim perfection. He simply kept showing up acting, learning, and, above all, listening. His legacy now isn't that of a flawless hero, but of a man who stumbled, recovered, and continued to move forward with dignity. In the end, Tom Hiddleston's downfall didn't destroy him, it redefined him. And in that redefinition lies a quiet lesson about fame, forgiveness, and the slow art of surviving oneself. In the end, Tom Hiddleston's story isn't one of scandal, it's one of perspective. He never spiraled, never lashed out, never vanished. Instead, his fall was measured in headlines and hesitations in the small, human cracks that appear when admiration turns into expectation. His name became a quiet study of what happens when sincerity meets cynicism, when the need to be understood collides with the hunger to be seen. Once, he embodied the fantasy of the perfect man, articulate, gracious, endlessly composed. Now, he stands as something far rarer, a reminder that perfection is both impossible and unsustainable. In Hollywood's endless cycle of rise and ruin, his story invites a more complicated question not about guilt, but about endurance. Can a celebrity ever truly reclaim authenticity once the public has questioned it? Do we forgive because they've changed, or because we've grown tired of judging? And perhaps most hauntingly of all, in a culture that demands transparency, is mystery still allowed to survive? Tom Hiddleston may never answer those questions himself, but through every silence, every performance, and every cautious smile, he leaves behind one lasting truth that even gods of mischief bleed when the spotlight burns too long.